There's no known way to your dreams, only to somebody else's. My friend who is getting his pilot's license recently crash landed a plane. One of the engines blew a rod, through a rod. I'm not a pilot. I don't know exactly what that means, but the engine blew up, and the whole cabin filled with smoke. This is a small, I think, two-engine plane, and the cabin filled with smoke so much that they were having a hard time breathing, and they definitely couldn't see. Like, you couldn't see out the windows. There was so much smoke in the cabin. So we rolled down the windows. He was flying higher than usual that day. He was about twice the elevation that he normally would have been at this, in this area where he was flying. His little brother, who's a couple years younger than him, who just returned from a 2-year service mission, which he did right out of high school, he wanted to, kind of go up with his big brother and see what it was like to be a pilot, see if that's something he wanted to do. After this experience, he decided that it wasn't, but he was. So he's at twice the elevation, and he follows his training. He rolls down the windows, tries to clear the cabin of smoke. He does the things that he has to do with the plane, and he prays and asks for guidance. And he gets this plane down, and him and his brother hop out, and the plane proceeds to melt into the runway. It just completely melted. There was little left, that you could recognize from the plane when it was done. And the investigators who looked at it afterwards said it was about a 10% survival rate in the situation that he was in, and yet he survived. Now, I opened this podcast by saying there's no known path to your dreams, only to somebody else's. What does this have to do with that? Well, I tell that dramatic story because my son wants to be a pilot. It's something that he's really thinking about. He's 15. And so it's a good time for him to be thinking about these kind of things. And I said, hey, if you want to be a pilot, we should go talk to my friend. He can probably give you some tips about being a pilot, how to navigate the process and stuff. And my son goes, no, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to get online and sign up for it. That's how you get things done. And I was like, and I couldn't convince him. I couldn't convince him that that he should go talk to my friend. We're still going to do it. I'm going to make him. But it's like, there's a big gap in our world today, and it's a gap of resourcefulness. Technology has conditioned our minds and our habits. It's conditioned us to think that there's like a 3-step process online somewhere for anything that we're ever going to do. And that is not true, especially if you're an entrepreneur or if you're an executive or a leader in a SaaS company and you want to grow your company. It's not just, as you've experienced this, there's not just a 3-step process or a 7-step process or even a 27-step process that you can just go follow and do stuff. But technology has conditioned us to think that there's a path online laid out for us that we just have to follow. The increase in convenience that technology has given us has actually created a serious deficit in our ability to live in discomfort, and especially in the discomfort of uncertainty. Do you remember what it was like? I'm old enough. Do you remember what it was like to be waiting for somebody in a certain place where you were going to meet them and they're not showing up? Do you remember that discomfort? Most of the younger generation have never experienced anything like that in their lives. Do you realize what a big difference that makes in their expectations for the world? And it's not just that exact situation. I mean, 1,000 times that example is multiplied throughout the lives of this generation that we're raising. But it's also, you don't have, just because we experienced that 20 years ago doesn't mean we're not being impacted by this as well. If you're my age, I'm 44. And the lack of uncertainty in our world, it's convenient, and it allows us to do things a lot more than we used to accomplish a lot more than we used to, but it's also making us soft. We're uncomfortable with uncertainty. We're uncomfortable without knowing what's going to come next. We're uncomfortable without having the path laid out before us and thinking that somebody else has just made this easy for us, okay? And so when I say there's no known path to your dreams, only to someone else's, what I'm talking about is the need for you to be willing to get uncertain and to get resourceful, because the greatest outcomes in your life aren't going to come from following the best practices that somebody else developed. Not that there's no place for that. Of course there is. I mean, I'm a marketer that helps people sell info products, among other things. I'm always advocating that SaaS companies should be adding info products, and info products are nothing more than, hey, here's everything I've accomplished, or everything I've learned, or everything my company knows how to do, and I want to give it to you so that you can do it faster and easier. I definitely believe in that. There's absolutely a place for that. But the greatest results in your life are, you may use that stuff, but you're going to get to the end and you're going to be like, oh, it wasn't exactly what I needed in my situation. And now I need to figure out how to bridge the gap. The greatest results are going to come when you pull together resources that weren't mapped out for you, because you know where you need to be and what you want to get, and you're going to see a way to get there. But if you can't get resourceful, you can't, get yourself to create and find the ways to pull those resources together in the way that's going to meet the needs and the goals that you have, you won't ever get them. There's a coach named Steve Hardison. There's a book about him written by his wife and a professional author together called The Ultimate Coach. Now, Steve is a premier elite coach. He charges $200,000 for 1 year of coaching, and people will fly in. He doesn't do it online, and he won't come to you. You've got to come to his house in Arizona. So he coaches people from Japan, and they're flying to his house in Arizona once every 2 weeks for an hour or 2 hour session of coaching. And they do it. They pay the $200,000 and they go there. And then they say it was the best investment they ever made at the end of their time. And he talks a lot about creation. And if you read the book and you read all that he says about creation, you'll start to realize that creation is his word for the ultimate form of resourcefulness, of being able to use all the resources available to you, your relationships, your skills, your knowledge, your background, your understanding, your reputation, all of those things to go and create an outcome that doesn't exist today. I am getting better at creation. Creation is something that I am not very good at. I'm talking about this because it's something that I've recognized as a gap in my own life. Okay. And I've been growing my company for over 1.5 years now, about 20 months. And my lack of creation, my lack of resourcefulness, and just going and pulling resources together, instead I'm trying to do it the way somebody else has laid out for me. That's been one of the reasons that I've noticed that I'm not growing as fast as I'd like to. One example of this from my own life, a time when I created the way that I think Steve is talking about when he talks about creation, is I have a book and I'm working on getting it published. First, you need an agent. There was a literature conference. It was actually a conference for a big author who lives here in Utah, and he has a conference where all his fans come. And his agent was going to be at this conference. And his agent was somebody that I wanted to work with. And I went to the conference. I found out about this conference actually like the second day of a 3-day conference. I was like, oh, now I could have just been like, hey, it's already day 2. I'm busy tomorrow. This isn't going to work out. That wouldn't be resourceful. That wouldn't be creation. And so I thought, I've got to get to this conference. How am I going to get there? I moved some stuff around. I just drove there. It's in Salt Lake. It's about an hour away. So I just drove there and I showed up. The website wasn't working to buy tickets anymore, but it said there were tickets still available. So I drove up there. I showed up and walked in, tried to buy a ticket, and was told as soon as I got there that you can't get in. The tickets are sold out. There's no way you can buy one. And I was like, well, the website was broken. It said there were tickets left. I drove all the way up here. I was talking to some junior guy. He didn't get it. He wasn't empowered to give me a good customer experience, or at least that wasn't his mindset. He's just like, no, can't do it. There's nothing you can do. And so I walked out and I was like, this was a moment of decision for me. I was like, I just wanted to go home. Like I didn't want to try to figure this out. I didn't want to get resourceful because it's easier to go home and say I tried. But I didn't let myself do that. So I walked around the area where you could go without getting a ticket and getting inside. I sat there and I was like, how can I do this? How can I create the outcome? And I actually have a little mantra that I tell myself. I tell myself every day, I am an infinitely creative and unstoppable son of God. Now, if I am infinitely creative and unstoppable, I don't go home and say I tried. But I thought, how do I get in there? I got to get in that place. Am I going to sneak in? What am I going to do to get in there? And finally, I came up with this idea. I was like, there's a cookie place down the road. It's like this gourmet cookie place. They have all these different flavors. It's really cool. I didn't know this was there, but I looked it up and I found it. And I thought, well, this guy probably doesn't have a place like this where he lives. This agent that I'm trying to talk to flew in. I'm like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to get some cookies. I'm going to package them up really nicely. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, hey, I'm not going to stay, but I just have this delivery for this guy at this booth. Can I go give it to him? You can even walk with me if you want. So that's what I did. And it worked. They were like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, let me go in with you. They actually brought the lady who was in charge of the whole event to me. So before I was stuck talking to this like junior kind of guy who didn't care. And now I've got the lady who's running the whole event. She's in charge of the whole conference. She's like, oh yeah, let me take you in. They went and got her and said, he wants to do this. And so they took me in. I walked right up to the agent. I gave him the cookies. I told him why I was there. And I told him, I would love to work with him. I actually sent him my query for representation the night before. So it should be in his inbox. And I had a note written with the cookies as well. So I delivered my message. I got in front of this guy and then I left. And it was perfect. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to stay for the conference. And it was amazing. And that was a time in my life when I crossed a threshold of my ability to create. Now, nothing came of it. The agent ended up being pretty lame. He didn't respond to me for like 3 months. And when he did, it was a form letter. Some people are just lame no matter what you do. But this is how you create. And when I learned that, doing that, it helped me understand like, wow, this is something that I'm not doing enough in my business. And so think about the ways that, what do you want in your career, in your company, in your role right now as a marketer? If you're, a founder and growing your business, what do you want? And how are you holding back and how you go and create it with the resources that are available to you, which honestly in today's world are almost limitless. Think about that and let's go create something. Thanks for being here on the Growth and Influence podcast today. And we will see you next time. Have a great day.